How much money would you pay to watch a Premier League game? Well, if you want to see Chelsea take on Liverpool or Manchester United at Stamford Bridge, the Dugout Club hospitality costs you £12,500. Yes, you heard that right. The spare 12.5 grand you have down the back of the sofa. With rising prices across most of the Premier League, are fans at risk of being priced out of watching their club for good? Joining us now is Thomas Concannon, Premier League Network Manager at the Football Supporters Association. My first question for you, Thomas, thanks for joining us as well. Who on earth is paying for this? Because reportedly, some tickets have already been sold, 12.5 grand.
It certainly wouldn't be me. And I was going to ask the same question of you three. Would you pay that? Because I don't know many people that would. And I suppose, you know, if they are selling the tickets, there is the attraction there for it, but it's a staggering price.
Yeah, and the other question really is, I mean, it's been 5 league games without a win now for Chelsea. Are they really worth that money as well?
I'll leave that up to the Chelsea fans to debate that one.
I mean, if we talk about this more widely, as I mentioned there, you know, the prices have been rising across the Premier League. What's the FSA's viewpoint of all of this? Because, like I said, it's getting worrying, I think, for supporters in terms of being priced out of going to see their club. Yeah,
it is concerning, and we've had a lot of fan groups. So we work with over 200 supporter organisations in the Premier League, and we, you know, one of the main themes coming out of that is just concern at the change in prices. You know, we're seeing prices go up, but also the change in atmosphere, and we think that the two are interlinked. And I suppose when we're looking at the Premier League being the best in the world, there's a reason for that, and it's because of how, you know, how fans have contributed to that, and it's the atmosphere and how successful they make the Premier League. So it's a big challenge. You know, it's a big debate, and one thing that we're looking to implement really is a price freeze this season, or for the start of next season. We want clubs to freeze prices because we do believe that we need to look at the rules that are currently in place on ticketing. You know, some of them in the Premier League rulebook are 25 years old. They're deliberately vague and full of loopholes, and it's just not acting in the right spirit, and we're seeing that with, you know, the erosion of concessions in certain areas as well, and just a severe lack of dialogue from certain clubs with their fan groups.
Henry, I want to bring you in on this. I know you're usually in the press box, of course, but just going back to that £12,500 and what it gets you at Chelsea, these are some of the apparent benefits. You get a padded seat next to the players' tunnel behind the home dugout, a signed, personalised Chelsea shirt. You greet the team as they arrive at Stamford Bridge, wine, cocktails, you get a hamper. Is it all worth 12.5 grand in your eyes?
You want a game for that. I mean, if you actually look on their website, the prices must have come down, because for the Liverpool and Manchester United games, which you assume would be the sort of, you know, the blue chip games, they're about 7,200. So, you know, they have come down a bit. But I have issues many issues with this. First, atmosphere, as Tom's been talking about, and the FSA have been fantastic on this. It does affect the atmosphere. Secondly, segregation. You're going to have away fans, and Chelsea point this out on their website. If you're an away fan in what is effectively a Chelsea home area, then you have to behave accordingly, i.e. no shirts. And they even say no T-shirts with offensive messages on them. And if you are thrown out, you don't have any financial recompense as well. So I do have issues with that in terms of security. The broader issue, and this is why the FSA is doing such brilliant work on this, is that collectively, English fans, they're just too tribal. It's not like the Germans, where they will actually sort of rally as a group nationwide. You'll have Bayern Munich and Borussia Dortmund, these old rivals, standing shoulder to shoulder on issues like ticket prices or ownership. Actually, on this issue, as actually with the European Super League, the fans have been fantastic. So we've seen Manchester United and Liverpool fans sharing banners. You know, there's an FSA banner out there. We've seen West Ham fans getting support from other London club supporters on their Save Our concessions, because they're looking like they are almost trying to price out younger fans and older fans. We have an issue particularly with, for me, the 18 to 24 generation, who are, my kids are that age, and when they go into that stage in life, they've they've got things like, the costs of whether it's college, whether it's starting out with work. They don't have much disposable income, and they're the lungs of the stadium, and they're the future of these clubs. And remember, if you look at how many Premier League clubs there've been, some of them have slid out of there. They don't always stay in the Premier League. We've got to look after these fans. These fans who are protesting are the ones who are going to be there, turning up, even if their team sinks down into the Championship and into League One. So it's absolutely vital. And just final thing I'll say on this, because the FSA do such brilliant work on it, I can only echo what they do, is that one of the reasons why broadcasters pay so much, particularly overseas broadcasters, for the English game, the English atmosphere, the English fan. They absolutely love that atmosphere. They love that backdrop. I went to about 140 games during COVID, games behind closed doors. It was terrible. All the clubs afterwards say, we've got to look after our fans because they are the lifeblood. The famous Jock Stein quote, football without fans is nothing. And the owners have forgotten that. And the only language they really understand is financial. And if I was one of the broadcasters and the fans, the real fans, the ones who generate the noise, the legacy fans, as they're slightly patronisingly called, if they are priced out of the game, the spectacle, as we call it, will actually ebb on television. And broadcasters will say, well, why are we paying so much?
Thomas, do you go along with what Henry says there, especially about almost a generation being left behind because of being priced out of these games?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with what Henry said there. This is one of the biggest concerns here. We do have clubs who are changing the age bands as to when you apply for a concession. There was one example at Nottingham Forest in a particular area of the ground where they reduced the age requirement from 19 to 17. So it meant that an 18-year-old in a certain part of the ground was going up from, I think it was about £190 to £850. These are staggering prices for young people. And it's examples like that as to where this campaign was born out of. We see that we got given some data by the Premier League that said that the average price across the Premier League is £38. We do have issues with that number because we don't think it takes into account the entire scenario. Fans have to pay membership fees to be able to buy one-off match tickets because of demand. There's no idea as to what the success rate of those is. So that, again, that average price can easily fly up. So we do believe there needs to be a proper discussion about this. There's a lot of data hidden behind commercial sensitivities, let's say, but clubs do have fan advisory boards now. A lot of them have to sign NDAs, so they can't discuss it any further anyway. We do believe there just needs to be that data, that proper data given to supporters so they can have an adult conversation about this and see where there might be where problems lie, but also how they can work together and fix those issues. For example, that Chelsea price, it would be fine, charge it, but subsidise something else then. Subsidise it for the regular fan who can't afford those ticket prices. But we don't see that. We see the general ticket prices going up, and the hospitality prices going up. We understand there's going to be hospitality. There's obviously a need for it and a demand for it in the Premier League. But it would be great to see that reflected in the general admission prices as well. But we aren't seeing that right now.
Well, let's take a look at some of those general admission prices across the league as well, because top flight ticket prices have risen by 800% since the 90s as well. It's quite a staggering figure. Of course, you've got your own campaign with the FSA, Thomas, to try and prevent this. But let's have a look at some of those clubs. Manchester United charged the most for the cheapest ticket at £66. And some fans might point out that the roof still leaks at Old Trafford, by the way. Southampton the least at £25. The most expensive matchday ticket goes to Fulham on £160. Ipswich's, meanwhile, is nearly 4 times less than that on £48. In terms of season tickets, Arsenal's cheapest is over £1,000, £1,073. West Ham is the cheapest there at £345. And finally, Fulham are back again with the most expensive season ticket, £3,000. But just down the road at Brentford, it will only set you back £598. Stefan, are we in a situation here where the demand of football is becoming so high that some fans will eventually not be able to afford these prices, because it feels to me as if these prices are only going to rise in certain cases.
Yeah, well, I think we need to separate the extremes. So the fact that there's an executive area in any of these clubs, to a large extent, is not the issue. I mean, it's as if we complain about first class on a flight. At the end of the day, the clubs can go and try and sell those tickets to whoever they like. I find it hard to believe anybody would pay for £12,500 to sit in actually a poor seat, but fine. I don't think that's so much the issue. I think it's very much around the general admission. So I would sort of look away from the extremes and think, okay, well, what can we do about general admission? We've got this amazing £30 away ticket, right? So that is the first thing that has to be protected at all costs. And, you know, I've been the beneficiary of that ticket at Chelsea and Brentford, and, you know, that it feels like a great bargain to have a £30 ticket at Chelsea, right? So that has to be protected. It has to be protected for fans, obviously, but also for the atmosphere and the product itself. And surely the Premier League and all of the clubs appreciate that. There's then the issue that you've got in terms of the overall stadium. And I think the challenge that the clubs have got is balancing the cost of the operations. So we know that all of the clubs are losing money, effectively, at the operational level. We know that there is a demand and very, very high wages, and there's a demand for lots of transfers, and that's all in there. And then this new thing that's come in over the last 2 or 3 years, maybe a little bit longer, but almost every major club is now talking about rebuilding the stadium. And these are projects that are costing £1 billion, £2 billion. Now, the real fear that I think we should all have is if the clubs go out and spend £2 billion on a stadium, they will have no choice but to push these general admission ticket prices up. But the economics just will not work any other way. And how we make that sort of, you know, how we bridge that issue, I think is extremely complicated. Fans will be priced out. I mean, Newcastle is a perfect example. You know, if they end up building a new stadium for £2 billion, there is no way that Newcastle are going to retain, you know, cheap match tickets at £32. And how can the fan base of particularly northern clubs versus maybe, you know, it's easier for Arsenal, for example, with a very London-based and international attendee, it's easier for them to charge a higher price. But how can a city like Newcastle sustain a stadium if it costs £2 billion, if the ticket prices go up to £50, £60, £70 again? It's an enormous problem. I don't think anybody's got any simple answer. You know, we can restrict the clubs, but ultimately, nobody's going to build a stadium for £2 billion if they're then restricted on ticket prices for most of the fans. So, you know, it's a very tricky issue.
How do you solve that kind of issue then, Henry? Because to be fair, Stefan has laid out, especially with all those clubs, as he rightly says, thinking about expanding. What's the way that you solve this kind of issue in your view?
What the clubs aren't factoring in, and there's more than strong anecdotal evidence to confirm this, is that a lot of the supporters who feel that they're being priced out, they're desperately clinging on to their season tickets, their season cards, because it's in their blood. They've inherited it from their parents, this love of the club, and they want to keep going. And it's a passion they want to pass on to their kids, so they will keep going, and the clubs will exploit that loyalty. But the flip side of that is that a lot of them are going, and they're simply not going and spending so much in the mega stores. They're not going and spending and having that extra burger or getting there half an hour earlier and sort of enjoying that side of it more. So the club's losing out on that side. So while they may be increasing the costs and encouraging more tourists to come in, particularly in London, you know, you just go to a London match now and it's remarkable, the high tourist element to it. But they're going to be losing out from those individual fans who do keep going. But then the clubs will think, well, if I can get one individual who comes in from overseas, he's going to spend £100 on a ticket and then probably even more in the mega store. That's fine. But they will pay the cost long term in terms of atmosphere.
Thomas, just before we let you go, we know you're a Newcastle United fan. Just spoke there about a potential new stadium. Just want to know where you stand on it. Would you rather stay at St James's Park or move to somewhere new?
I would rather stay. It feels like St James's is my home. So if there was a way to redevelop, I understand there's a demand there, and we could probably increase and still fill it. But St James's Park to me is so special. I would hate to sell out and pass it on to something new. And I think one thing with Newcastle as well, we are so central to the city centre that to lose that would be a massive hit as well. So yeah, it's an interesting debate certainly.
Thomas, thank you very much indeed. Thomas Concannon there from the FSA. He's the Premier League Network Manager.